Welcome back. We have Patrick Stokes, head football coach at Williams High School in Burlington. Really good season last year. They finished 10-2. They've been pretty good of late. But coach, I think the big question with this team is the quarterback. So your quarterback went on to Duke, I believe, Dan Mahan. So
Yes,
that's
sir.
probably a big focal point of this year's team. Just before we get into that, how's everything been going this offseason?
Hey, Joel, thanks so much for having me. Really appreciate the opportunity to be here on High School OT with you guys and talk about our team. We're excited about our team. We have a lot of the key components of a very successful conference championship team coming back from last year. It's been a remarkable offseason, developing a little bit of depth at some positions and also finding some diamonds in the rough at other positions. Very thankful for the staff that we have. The continuity on the staff has remained consistent. So the program itself, that steadfastness that it takes to be successful year in and year out, regardless of whom the players are, really helps me as a head coach manage things. So really it's about training our young guys, and when their opportunity is here and it presents itself, it's ready for them to go take the stage and make things happen. You had asked about Dan Mahan. Dan had a remarkable spring at Duke University. One of the cool things is the quarterback who's replacing him is Kieran Fuller. Kieran was an all-conference receiver last year. If I'm not mistaken, he led the conference in yards, and he's a remarkable athlete. As a junior, he led our JV team to the conference championship, so he's no stranger to playing quarterback. In fact, his sophomore year, he had to start 2 to 3 varsity football games because Dan was out with debilitating ankle injury. And we were undefeated with Kieran at the helm his sophomore year. Again, had a good year there with the JVs. Last year, we moved him to wide receiver, but he continued to take snaps every single day and participate in all of our quarterback drills. So not to say he's ready to go light the world on fire, but he's certainly more than capable. And I really think he has the potential to be an all-conference quarterback for us this year.
Interesting. Seems like there's always just a quarterback waiting at there, Williams.
Well, that and honestly, that's the ideal, and that should be the norm for everywhere because you're only an injury away. We don't really necessarily put the whole responsibility to be great on one guy. Okay, and the success of the team can't ride on one position. So one of the things we talk about consistently is how good are we 3 deep? Okay, and that's on both sides of the ball, and we try not to have overlap. So people give me a hard time. Why do you have so many coaches, and why do you have 105 players? Well, if you're going to be good 3 deep on both sides of the ball, you've got to have guys to do that. It doesn't necessarily mean your number 2 or 3 are going to be as good as somebody else's number 1, but you need to be able to continue to perform at that level. And so what it does is it creates consistency from year in, year out. And that's why Kieran's ready to lead our team.
Awesome. So another exciting player on this team is your running back, Marion Richmond. He kind of stood out when he was a younger player and has still been good, of course, as he gotten older. What do you expect from him as his senior year?
I think Omarion has the potential to be the conference player of the year on the offensive side of the ball. Those are some very intentional conversations that we've had. He's a versatile athlete. And Omarion can play receiver. He can play running back. He does a lot of the dirty work, too, blocking on the perimeter for our screen game and whatnot. We've got another really good young running back, a sophomore named Hacian Bigelow. And so fully expect to see the Dogs in a lot of 2-back sets, putting pressures on the defense. And again, because both of them can stretch the field vertically as well as horizontally and run the ball through A-gap, the possibilities are pretty open for our offensive coordinator, Matt Rigsby, to put us in some good situations and, again, to apply the pressure to defenses. I don't think you're just going to be able to load the box on us, nor are you going to be able to empty the box. We'll take advantage of what's there. And all that to say, assuming we stay healthy, Joel, Omarion's had some injuries here and there through the years, and when you're as hard of a running back as what he is, you're going to face some of those things, which is, again, why having that depth is important. Just this summer, Omarion's been shown a lot of leadership and helping some of our other players that are new to the sport. We got a guy named Colby Elliott. He was the conference basketball player of the year last year. He's starting at our wide receiver position right now. He's decided to come out, never played high school football. Boy, you talk about a gift. He's got athleticism for days, and Omarion has been really influential in helping him understand the system. So real proud of the leadership we're seeing.
That's awesome to hear. Well, tell me about the rest of the skill guys on the team.
Yeah. Returning all-conference receiver William Overby, who can play tight end. He can play slot. He's also played some running back. And, in fact, Joe, he played some quarterback when he was on our JV team. That versatility that William brings to it, I'll also say William's a 4.5 GPA guy. So he gets it done in the classroom. He's a straight A kind of person, very dependable player. Tight end Braden Vetter. Braden Vetter is a name that may not come across your desk, but Braden Vetter was at Georgia last week. He was at UVA this weekend. He was at Duke last weekend. Braden Vetter got a private tour at West Virginia University, so his name is really blowing up. He's a 6'4", 225 tight end. He's a class of 2027, also a 4.25 GPA guy. So got some really strong skill guys we're excited about. On the offensive line up front, it's a bit of a rebuild in some ways, but we're anchored by Cassidy Gray and Porter Fawcett. Those kids have been tried and true, and what they lack and a little bit of size, they make up for in heart, effort, and determination. Hugh Wilson at center is a sophomore that has really shown that he's capable to help us out. And then we've got some other guys, Colton Twine, Corey Glenn. These are some fellas that are real tall, long, and lengthy and strong, and we're trying to make sure we got all the right parts. But I do think O-line, at least early on, will be a little bit of O-line by committee, making sure we get the right recipe in there. One thing to go back and touch on the skill guy that I failed to mention, kid named Christian Booth. Christian Booth is an electric athlete, ended up starting at corner for us in the playoffs last year as a freshman, had a remarkable JV year, and unfortunately, due to an untimely injury to our JV quarterback, we were undefeated. Our JV quarterback, Kyle and Chris, got hurt, had an ACL tear. Christian comes in and plays quarterback for us, even though he's not necessarily a natural quarterback, and did a great job. Led us on, I think, to 5 or 6 victories the rest of the season, and he's a guy that's going to be a high impact player for us. Getting the ball in his hands is definitely a priority.
Awesome. Well, let's flip it over to defense. So there's 7 stars back on that side of the ball.
Yeah. Defensively, our best player pound for pound on the defensive side of the ball is Elijah Kimber. Making sure he's getting it done in the weight room, he's doing what he needs to do in the classroom, and just making sure he's in the best position to help our team be successful is going to be a critical part of our ingredient. But around him, a very supporting cast. The leader in the weight room, I think, all offseason has been Nathan Williams-Medley. His energy is extremely high. Shows up every day to work. He's here early, stays late, takes the leadership role in the group chats and all those things that you want to see. Mm-hmm. On the back end, replacing player of the year, Leonte Turner, has been a bit of a challenge at the bandit position. That's one of our backside, weak side safeties, we call it. And Donovan Wallace is anchoring us back there right now. He started at corner. Clinton Caesar's done well at a corner spot, really holding his own through these 7-on-7s. He hasn't really been challenged a whole lot. And when he has, he's risen to the challenge. Couple of rising juniors that are in these other positions, and we're going to find out kind of where they all fit, who's going to emerge as starters. There's some question marks on the defensive line, but seeing some really strong performances out of defensive tackle Abraham Rosas as well as Kinston Schaffner. Excited about them. And I know I'm going through all these names, but, these guys are
I appreciate hard. It.
Well, Joel, they're working hard. And they were here in the spring. We've averaged between 85 and 93 guys. That's our low and that's our high for summer workouts. And we're 8 to 11, Monday through Thursday. And these guys are consistently showing up and getting better. And we've been doing that since the beginning of summer. We're coming up on the dead period here at the end of this week, and then we'll pick right back up in July. So young man that I think is going to be great for us. He was an all-conference wrestler as a freshman. His name's Gavin McMahon. Don't know how much varsity football he'll play. Probably a lot, depending upon, how he continues to grow. But the kid works hard. He's very strong. And I love these dual sport guys. I think it's great when you can get guys that excel in different sports. And if you look at your best athletes across the state of North Carolina, many of them play multiple sports. We as a coaching staff at Williams High School work really well sharing athletes and making sure that not just sharing athletes, but like when we schedule our practices and workouts, we don't put players in conflict. Mm-hmm. And I don't know who out there is going to watch this or listen to it, but I would recommend when one team does well, the whole school can share athletes and share resources. Just a much better vibe for the whole campus. That's so important. I'm thankful to be here.
Yeah, that is very important. And I know there's some schools where there's kind of more competitiveness between their different programs. So I'm glad to hear that everything's kind of a communal thing at Williams. And those offseason numbers, like getting 90 kids at spring practices, this is just a 6A program. You're going to be hard pressed to find other 6A programs with those kind of numbers in spring.
Right. Practice. Well, and that's for summer. Not to correct you, maybe I misspoke earlier. During spring, we had about 75 because we hadn't added all of our. We were 75. We hadn't added all of our freshmen in yet. Obviously, we got a tight relationship, and several of those guys from Turntine, that's our feeder school, they came over and they were able to watch, learn our systems, listen in on meetings, and so they hit the ground running. And frankly, I made a comment earlier today. We got a kid. I don't want to mention his name, but he's a great prospect for us, and he's going to really grow in the sport. And he already pretty much has a complete handle on what our defense is, and he's been here literally for 2 weeks. So seeing how he grows and blossoms and continue to develop now that the cerebral aspect of it is kind of taken care of, he's going to fly. He's going to make just I don't know. It's going to turn a lot of heads. A guy I mentioned earlier too, or failed to mention, excuse me. He's a punt returner. He's going to hold for us on the extra point field goal team. He's going to start at the wide receiver position. His name's Zach Powell. And you talk about leadership. Zach Powell's a guy. He's a quiet leader, and that's probably why he didn't necessarily come to mind, because Zach is steady. He says what he needs to say when he needs to say it, but again, he's here early, making sure kids are getting here and whatnot. And that stuff, we can't do it all. And we've all read these books on teamwork and culture and leadership, but truly, we try to instill in our players that the best teams are player-led teams, and right now our guys are doing that.
Good. Well, you mentioned Zach as your returner. Who's your kicker? I think your kicker's back from last year.
Yeah, so Brian Isley kicked for us last year. We also had Colbrink Skelly. He was a senior who graduated, and he's going to go off to ECU and do some good stuff. But Brian Isley's going to punt for us. He's also going to kick off for us. Young man named Ferris of Cena. Ferris kicked for our JV team last year, and right now he's probably the front runner for the extra point duties. His leg's not quite as strong as Brian's, but his accuracy's pretty strong there. I think our kicking coach does a good job of preparing these guys. That's my dad, Terry Stokes. Shout out, Dad. It's and I'm thankful because Dad works with these kickers, and to him, and it's the most important position on the field. He makes sure that they're ready. He's there every day. They're also working out with us in the summer, which is not necessarily common. So thankful to have those systems in place.
Good. Well, you mentioned your dad there. Tell me about the rest of your staff. I know you have a lot of guys there helping you out.
Yeah, we do. Last time I counted, Joel, we got 18 coaches on staff, and I'm thankful for every one of them. And the whole goal, right? You want your coordinators. Our offensive coordinator is Matt Rigsby. Matt's got experience as a head football coach. He's been doing this. It is his third decade of coaching. So he's got a lot of experience. He's been around some really, really, really good programs, brings a wealth of knowledge, and he takes charge of the offense. Kelvin Bozeman, he's in his second decade of coaching. Kelvin Bozeman's a high-energy guy, well-connected, knows a lot about different offenses and how to break them down. Defensively, he's run some different things through the years, but again, a lot of experience and really relates well to the kids, especially some of those kids that are a little bit difficult to manage at times. Bozeman's got a really great way of connecting with them to get the most out of the opportunities. Linebackers coach Brandon Spoon helps Bozeman out, making sure that defense is there, and helping Coach Rigsby out. It's Matt Fussell. Matt Fussel's also our special teams coordinator. Matt played here at Williams, and his son Pierce just graduated this past year, was multiple-time all-conference offensive lineman. Matt does our weight room and does a great job, and he and Coach Feely at Duke University, and that's didn't have anything to do with Dan going to Duke, but those guys really have a nice relationship. And so very much of what we're doing in our weight room day in and day out mirrors exactly that latest and greatest research that's happening at Duke and what they're doing in their weight room. So Matt really does a great job with that. And then the other coaches, I don't want to name them all individually, but I'm thankful for them. And so what we try to do is we try to have a varsity coach and a JV coach at every position on offense and defense. So the way we practice is maximizing time on task at your position. We've identified on the JV and varsity level somewhere between probably 4 and 6 hybrid players, guys that are just too good to keep off the field, and guys that we need to make sure are on the field as much as possible. But at the same time, we have 11 dedicated offensive starters and 11 dedicated defensive starters. And there's nobody who starts on both sides of the ball. Now, if we've got a matchup situation, if we're late in the game and we need to get this guy in, if we're a little gassed, we want to make sure we have the best 11 on the field. But again, it's a model that we use that's worked really well for us. And not everybody agrees with it, but we want to be as fresh as we can possibly be in the fourth quarter. And this is how we do that. So anyway, and it's worked well. Our coaches work well. You talk about sharing athletes from sport to sport. You also have to share athletes from position to position. And if everybody practices both sides of the ball, that's great some places. But for us, there's guys that'll never be necessarily needed on both sides of the ball. So we choose not to do that.
Good. Makes sense. So new conference this year. It's the basically the big Alamance Conference plus Person. It's called the Mid Carolina 4A, 5A, 6A. There's Cummins, Graham, Eastern Alamance, Person, like I said, Southeast Alamance, Western Alamance, Southern Alamance, and y'all.
Yes.
It's a big conference. What are you doing in non-conference? What is that? Just 3 games you have?
Yeah. So non-conference, we're playing Eastern Guilford, Orange High School, as well as Heritage High School in Raleigh. Excited about that. Never traveled to Raleigh for a game.
It's Wake Forest, so it's a little bit further than Raleigh.
I got you. Okay. Well, Thank you for correcting me. You can tell I've never been there.
It's about 30 minutes more considering traffic. So
so we better allocate. That's good. I'll make sure I let our principal know to get us out real early. No, and again, appreciate you saying that. So set that up, and it was very difficult. I know you've done some things to try to help teams match up across the state. It was a major challenge finding teams to play because you didn't necessarily know who was going to be in your conference. We all had these teams, and then things got shook up, and I knew it was a mess all across the state. We feel fortunate to have the schedule that we do, that we think it's going to be a challenge for us. Eastern Guilford's tough with Coach Hessenthaler leaving, and going to Orange High School. He always runs a good brand of football. He's going to be good there. We've had some big battles when he was the head coach at Southern. And then, of course, the Heritage game. And then you mentioned our conference. I'm glad to have Alamance County back in conference together. Of course, Coach Johnson up at Person. They do a great job, and that's going to be a challenge. But there's been a lot of turnover, and just in the last couple of weeks in Alamance County and within our conference. I'm sure you guys have probably covered it, and if you haven't, I'm sure you will be. But no slouch games, and a lot of rivalries that are going to be rekindled. We did a 7-on-7. We had almost 800 kids here last Thursday for this FCA Lineman 7-on-7 challenge that Alex Mebane, the director of the Alamance, Chatham, and Caswell FCA, puts on. And it was a great event. It had a little bit of a different kind of feel to it because all of us are in conference right now. In the past, we just get together and kind of work out each other, and it's Alamance County and whatnot. It was a little bit different this past week, just because there's a little bit more riding on the line with the conference and the playoff opportunity. So we're looking forward to it. And I think a lot of our fans in the area and the alumni are also looking forward to it because this is really the way it used to be throughout the 70s, 80s, and early 90s here in Alamance County.
There's going to be some outstanding crowds in that conference for sure.
There will be. And we've only got 4 home games this year due to the way scheduling worked out. So we need all those ticket sales we can get. But yeah, it's definitely going to be good in many ways for the schools financially.
Yeah, I agree. Well, Coach, I appreciate your time today. Thanks for coming on here and sharing about your team, all your players, and your staff. Looking forward to the season. Just a couple months to go. I think we're actually within 2 months now before Friday. So, wow, it's coming up fast. So I appreciate the time. I know you're busy. I'll let you get back to it.
Joel, sounds great. Thanks as always for having me.